What is up, YouTube? It's CS back here with another installment, and here is my review for episode 31 of Deadliest Warrior. This one was between the French Foreign Legion and the Gurkha. So yeah, before I get analytical on this Deadliest Warrior tip, I gotta say, pretty cool way to end off this third and historic season. Of course, the introduction of Mac was huge, and this new format altogether are just amazing. And what I saw out of these two final episodes, wow, just cool stuff. Of course, Vampire versus Zombie, I'll get to that in a separate review later. But this one, with the FFL and Gurkha, you know, pretty much what I thought was going to happen happened in terms of the weapons. And in terms of X Factors, I thought the Gurkhas would edge the ones they needed, which would help bolster their kills in the end. So let's move on and take a look at the weapons starting in long range. Alright, now taking a look at what we have in long range, just beautiful marksmanship done on both sides. The first guy who went, of course, Nick Hughes for the French Foreign Legion. Yeah, he had a nice test, what can I say? With his bar Browning automatic rifle, he was able to move swiftly through each stage of that long range test and creating instant kills on each dude, finishing with a time of 58 seconds. And yeah, he only had one reload. Looking good right there, 58 seconds. However, that time was bested by Roster Rai for the Gurkhas, and he threw up a time of 53 seconds, although he had one jam and he had to change his magazine once because of that, plus two other times. But for some reason, he finished with 53 seconds. So, you know, he had the faster time, but clearly the gun he was using in the Bren wasn't as functional due to the fact that it jammed. And it was kind of clumsy in terms of how you're supposed to scope with that thing. And, you know, it is a heavier weapon. It did have the 30-round magazine over the Browning's 20, but for the most part, the Browning, you know, it showed a quick and easy magazine change. And, you know, it's just a more functional gun. It's less recoil, so it's easier to use. It's easier to scope with. So that's why I got the edge, even though it put up a bigger time. So, yeah. Edge goes to the Browning automatic rifle and the French Foreign Legion. Alright, now moving on, we have medium range weapons here. On one side we have the MAS 36 of the French Foreign Legion. It put up a muzzle velocity of 2,647 feet per second, hit bloody hard compared to the Gurkhas and their gun, the Lee Enfield number 4, which put up a muzzle velocity of 2,407 FPS. So, you know, the MAS 36 hit a little harder. And due to the fact that it hits harder, usually guns like that we end up being more accurate. In this case, it kind of was. They had the same results in the end, with each of them scoring 5 instant kills, but the MAS 36 was more accurate when hitting the moving targets, and because of that, I give that the edge. You guys would have to see the test for yourself if you want a little bit more truth. But yeah, they pretty much both put up the same results. The real difference here is the amount of reloads the Lee Enfield did compared to the MAS 36. The Lee Enfield had a really efficient reload, and you know, you just kind of dropped a 10 rounds into the magazine like that, real easy. And because of that, he wound up, Roster Rai wound up with a time of 2 minutes and 7 seconds. And then when you compare that to the 2 minutes and 54 seconds of the MAS 36, Nick Hughes was reloading that shit as fast as he could, but holy crap, you're going to wind up with 2 minutes 54 seconds if you're going to reload 3 times, and you're doing each reload with individual bullets each. So you're in the 5-round magazine, you're putting the bullets in one at a time. So, you know, due to the fact that he got killed on reload time, and due to the fact that 10-round magazine is better than 5, the edge went to the Lee Enfield in the end. You know, both completed their tasks beautifully, but due to the speed of the test that the Lee Enfield put up, and again, with the ease of loading 10 rounds somehow over 5, you know, that's why I got the edge. So yeah, edge, Lee Enfield number 4, and the Gurkhas. Next up, short range. This is a really easy test to call. On one side you have the Kukri, and the other side you have the Camillus. Of course, the Camillus was the knife that the French Foreign Legion have, and the Kukri was the Gurkhas. Of course, the Camillus, it was basically, you know, I don't know why they just called it the Camillus. Camillus was the company that made the K-bar, and that's pretty much what you saw on the show. 81 miles per hour in terms of impact velocity. But of course, it's going to be faster when you're coming into stab. Let's see that thing slash as well. A Kukri can stab, it can slash. We saw 3 nice slashes with the Kukri that Rosfer Ryan did in that test. Just beautiful chopping motion. Yeah, it's gonna put big gashes in you, and that's what we saw on those pigs. 3 instant kills. Chopped the one pig down like through its forehead. Just nasty. Not pig, the gel torso in the middle. Just amazing. But Nick put up a really gruesome test with the Camillus, trying to prove his point with that knife. But in the end, it's pretty much only a stabber. And with its less surface area compared to the Kukri, that's why it didn't get the edge, and that's why the Kukri did. So edge, Kukri, and the Gurkhas. Alright, YouTube, now moving on. That about does for weapons. 2 edges to 1 for the Gurkhas so far. They have short range and mid range, of course. The FFL got the long range with their bar. But let's move on to tactics and X factors. Tactics, this one went to the FFL, you know, for their triumph at the Battle of Bir Hakeim, prevented General Rommel from advancing. They held their ground accordingly due to the fact that they did that in a badass manner. They got the edge in this X factor for tactics, or test, or whatever you want to call it. But they got the edge there. Let's take a look at X factors. Gurkhas got 85 in psychological warfare compared to the FFL's 87. This makes sense. FFL mentally tough if they're able to survive that training. So for them to edge out the Gurkhas here makes sense. So they got a high rating of the 87. Gurkha still got 85. You know, it's not like they're donkeys outside, you know, fighting in war. You know, they're not going to be broken or freaked out easily as well. So they got a decent rating to 85. So 87 to 85 in favor for the FFL in psychological warfare. Moving on, we have discipline. Gurkhas got 88, and then FFL got a 76. Makes sense for the Gurkhas to get this high of a rating. You know, they grew up wanting to be warriors. They grew up in, you know, just training and in the Himalayas and shit. You know, you'll get disciplined, I guess. You know, what can I say? You know, this is all they know, from what I understand. So for them to get an 88. Makes sense. FFL getting a 76. Again, being put forth through that training, I believe they should have got a higher rating in discipline. You know, discipline comes through training. So, you know, I thought they should have scored at least in the 80s, but they didn't with the 76. Moving on, we have training, of course, FFL 90. No surprise. I thought they would score this high, and they did. And the Gurkhas, 87, you know, they weren't slouches. Again, training in the Himalayas and that high altitude. So for them to get 87, you know, it makes sense. But again, FFL, brutal ass training. So 90 is well deserved. And the physicality, this went to the Gurkhas. How can it not go to the Gurkhas? Training at high altitude, you know, a lot of combat sports fighters do this, train in high altitude, and helps them throughout an actual fight. So no doubt this will help in actual war as well. They're not going to gas. So for them to get scored at a 91, the Gurkhas, that makes sense. FFL still scored high with an 84. They still trained in ridiculous conditions in the cold and in the desert. But again, the Himalayas, it's like the highest areas in the world. So 91, well deserved for the Gurkhas. So that's what we got for X factors. FFL got psychological warfare and training, and then the Gurkhas got discipline and physicality. But in the end, though, this shit went to the Gurkhas, 52%. They dictated the pace of the fight with their short and mid-range weapons, of course, the Kukri and the Lee Enfield number 4. So those were victorious for them. Of course, the bar outperformed the Bren in the end for long range for the FFL. That kept them in the fight, but their 48% obviously just isn't enough. Also, a fatigue rate was taken into consideration. Well, not taken into consideration, but they just showed, you know, showed the fatigue rate in the end from what they got off the physicality X factor, I would assume. And it said that the Gurkhas only gassed like 5% of the time compared to the 10.9% of the time of the French Foreign Legion. So no doubt, you know, physicality of the Gurkhas definitely was a factor, and they were just able to outperform the FFL in the long run. So what can I say? I would assume that their X factors of discipline and physicality did help inflate the results for the favor of the Gurkhas, of course. And I guess that's what happened. So what can I say? I did pick the Gurkhas to do this, and they did. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and hopefully my review as well. And yeah, hopefully I see you soon. Of course, my episode 32 review will be out shortly with the vampires and zombies, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't already, it really helps a lot. And my links are in the description below, so again, thank you for all the support. Comment as well below, and tell me what you think of this episode. Thumbs up if you agree with the episode, thumbs down if not, and I will see you soon. Thank you for all the support, and take care.